This is a pedal board for my friend Joe Simpson. Joe is primarily going to use this board for worship music that he plays through his church. I'm going to go through the signal path of this pedal board in addition to some of the prototype pedals that are found on this board, and also go through the interface and buffer and all the functions that performs. And lastly, I'll finish up with some modifications that I did to the Voodoo Lab Pedal Power 4x4. So to begin, we start the signal path right at the buffer interface, and that's the black box that you see that's located between the Strymon timeline on the left and the TC Polytune Mini on the right. So it's that black box located right between the two that you see three cables coming out of. And this buffer interface does a couple of things. It is a tri-buffer, so it has a single input buffer and two output buffers. And the two output buffers have individual trim pots that are located on the side of the interface, so you can adjust for any cable resistance voltage or anything like that that may attenuate the level some. And usually if those need to be used, if at all, they are only raised maybe a decibel at most. In this particular application, they didn't need to be used at all, but I just like to use that on all the interfaces to give the option to do that. The right output, which is for the stereo amplifier when you're running them both amplifiers together, has an isolation transformer on it and also a polarity switch that's located on the rear of the buffer interface so that you can make sure both amps are in polarity. Sometimes people will refer to this as phase. It also has a tuner out, which is wide off of the input buffer, and that goes, of course, to the TC Polytune Mini. But to get into the signal path specifically, we enter in on the right side of the buffer interface, and that enters the input buffer immediately, and then it goes right to the jangle box. And the jangle box has just been modified so that it accepts a standard polarity 9-volt DC instead of a reverse polarity, I believe, as it comes stock. From there, it goes into a Maxon SD9. From there to the Vertex Jan-Ray Boost. From there into the Blackstone. And then it goes into the Vertex Boost, which of course is linked out to the Vertex expression pedal all the way on the far right side. And this one is done to the Landau spec, so when you bypass the boost, the expression pedal is not active, but when the boost is engaged, then the expression pedal will reflect whatever decibel level is set on the potentiometer on the Vertex Boost. After the Vertex Boost, we go into the Vertex Landau Stereo Chorus, then into the Josh Smith Dual Trem by Rocket Pedals. After the Josh Smith Dual Trem, we then go into the Neo Ventilator, stereo out of the Neo Ventilator into the Strymon timeline, and stereo out of the Strymon timeline into the buffer interface again for the stereo outs for the left and right. Again, the buffer interface does have an internal mixer, so the left and right are mixed together when there's just the left cable is into the interface, so that way you get a true mono sound, not just the left side. And that's just something that I think is important to make sure you have. Some pedals seem to be able to do fine just having the left output. Others seem to be affected by that. I just do it as a standard in all the buffer interfaces so that you always get both left and right even when you're in mono, so it's mixed properly if you decide that you don't want to have a stereo setup for any particular performance. I also wanted to mention that the MIDI mouse is connected to the Strymon timeline, so patches are changed from there. Also, the Roland EV5 is attached to the Strymon timeline to do any of the expression controls, and I think Joe primarily seems to have set it up for mix based on the testing that I've done. Lastly, I wanted to talk about the mods to the Pedal Power 4x4. I did some mods here which I've done for Michael Landau and also on several other boards to the distortion pedals to kind of brown them out a little bit. I reduce the current, so it does a current limiting sort of function. This is different than voltage restriction, which is typically what you see on some like Pedal Power 2s. The current limiting helps kind of brown it out a little bit more and gives a little bit more of that battery feel, although I do still feel that carbon batteries are most effective at doing this if the pedal is sensitive to them. But I did that on the Jan-Ray and the SD9 and also the Blackstone. All the other pedals are receiving the normal current as dictated from the pedal power 4x4. And otherwise, that's it for this pedal board. If you have any questions, please feel free to write them below. I'd be happy to answer them. Like this video if you like it, and if you'd like to see more like it in the future.